Frank Gehry is one of the most influential architects in the world today. Some say the greatest. Born in Canada, he made his name in America. In the late 1970s, he sparked a movement that reinvented the architectural landscape of Los Angeles. He captured the imagination with his iconoclastic use of shape and form and material. His reputation and esteem extends across international waters. His latest project, the Guggenheim Museum Bilbao, will be completed this fall. Philip Johnson calls it, quote, the greatest building of our generation. I am pleased to have Frank Gehry back on this program. Welcome back.
Thank you.
It's been a while, and I'm glad to see you.
It's been a long time.
First, let me just talk about this project, because it's getting enormous attention. You're in here today for some kind of
press conference
yes, about it. It came about how?
The history of how the Guggenheim got in. The Basque government wanted to convert their industry, which was failing there, I guess, to tourists.
Right.
And they decided to compete with Barcelona and Madrid culturally. So they hired Norman Foster to do a subway, and Calatrava to do a new airport, Jim Sterling to do a new railroad station, and they wanted a museum, and they made a relationship. They hooked up with Big Tom. Right.
Big Tom at the Guggenheim.
Big Tom at the Guggenheim.
Right. We'll see him later on video.
And he's amazing. And and they concocted a deal which ended up in an architectural competition between me and a couple of my friends, Iso Sagi and Kopp Himmelblau.
Right.
And I won. And that's how it started.
Okay. Here is what's interesting about it, too. I mean, it wasn't an easy sale, because they went to the Guggenheim and said, you know, we want to create a museum.
Right.
We're going to pay the bill.
Right.
We're going to build a museum.
It's amazing.
I know. It's just great.
Yeah.
We're going to build a museum. We're going to pay the architect, build the museum. We just want you to bring some of your paintings over here and put them in the museum.
Right.
And we're going to build a kind of museum that will house your paintings that perhaps you can't exhibit at the Guggenheim.
Yeah, yeah. But they hooked up with the right guy, because he had the vision of what it should be. I wouldn't have made a gallery 450 feet long by myself.
Yeah.
Tom had the vision of how this art was going to be displayed, what he was going to display, what kind of museum it would be, and he was, you know, a great client. I mean, the first person that at that scale that played with me and egged me on and pushed me beyond. I mean, he would ratchet it up every time I came to show him something. He'd say, well, why don't you, come on, can't you
think bigger?
Think bigger, think bigger. So I tried, and I did, and the Basques are wonderful people, wonderful, very handshake. That you can handshake on anything, and then they'll live up to it, and they expect the same from you. So whatever was in the model had to be delivered, and it had to be on time and on budget. And they were like, no changes, nothing could be changed. Once the thing was shown to them,
that's great.
I loved it. It was a discipline, you know, that everybody should learn that, because there'd be a lot less trouble between architects and clients if there was this disciplined client and this.
Let's set up what we want to do, shake hands, and adhere to it.
And build it.
And do it. And as I understand, you came in on budget, on time.
Yes.
This is not like the Disney in terms of projections of that.
Well,
we'll get to the Disney
problem.
in a second. All right, we'll get to that in a second. But so all of a sudden you get the commission, you got the handshake. When you went to the property, what did you see? What did you think? What did you want to do? Because I'm going to see a model first and then the reality.
Well, I heard from my friend Richard Serra about Bilbao 10 years before I went there, that this city had a landscape and a toughness to it that appealed to him. He said, you got to go there. It's one of a special place. And then I forgot about it. And next, Tom called me and said, can you meet me in Bilbao in 2 days? I got there, and I realized that what you see is a river that's been in shabby a little bit at this point. They're cleaning it up, but goes through the city, through the old city. It's filled with, one side of the river has 19th century a university building, the Duesto, a major university. And it leads to the Civic Center. And the other side is industrial buildings, shipping, that are being demolished and taken down. And the toughness of the landscape, because of the industrial and because the 19th century comes right down to the water, it's very tough in an aesthetic sense. What saves it is the green hills. It's in a green valley. And so it's a ring of green around it that holds this toughness and makes it palatable, makes it accessible and reasonable.
And the idea, the operative idea sort of, or a concept or philosophy going in was?
For the building?
Yeah.
Well, you know, Tom started talking about the next millennium, the new museum. He wanted to show Jimmy Rosenquist. He wanted to show Flavin's 400-foot-long light thing.
So we need space and light.
He wanted to have a Richard Serra retrospective. He wanted us, you know, everything.
Okay, roll tape. This is a model that was on exhibition at the Guggenheim yesterday and today. We'll see that, and then we'll see actually some video that Tom and Frank did together. But roll tape first, and we'll take a look at this model, and he'll voice over it and tell me what we're seeing. Roll tape. Tell me what this is.
That's the entry plaza that connects to the 19th century city, which is behind us. And you come in where you see the people crossing the bridge and go down. No, this is the other side.
Yeah,
now.
The back side.
Back side. And the little blue building is the administrative offices, and the square box are the back of house. And the green, what's green is actually in titanium in the real building. And that model, this model that you're looking at, was made by a computer. The computer, we've been using the computer to demystify these shapes for the contractor.
Yeah, you had to be a convert to that. You did not come
well,
easy
I hate the imagery of it, and it dries out. You know, if you have a good idea, it looks dried out in the computer.
But what it enables you to do is to be able to communicate to the contractor and the builder.
And to control the costs of buildings with shapes like this. Demystify it so that the contractor comes on board without panic. You're looking at the back side. Those glassy shapes, they're frosty, are the glass. They would be transparent.
And there is what I call the distinguishing Gehry characteristic there. I mean, the sense that you are in motion and curves, what?
Boats.
Some
call this the fish gallery, the long thing, because of my fascination with fish.
What is your fascination with fish?
This face is out. Well, I got interested in it because it was older than man, and when my buddies started doing postmodern stuff, I said, well, if you're going to go back, let's go back further.
Let's go back to the beginning.
But I really, I was interested in movement, and when a fish moves, it's so beautiful. And I started to make forms like that and was able to achieve that sense of movement. And I developed a vocabulary, an architectural vocabulary.
But that is at essence of a lot of what you do now, is it not? I mean, the sense of the vocabulary of movement?
I do, yes. I mean, I suppose...
it's a characteristic,
I suppose about the time we finish this talk, I'm going to go back and do square buildings and boxes, just to be perverse. But
we will put you in a box of motion, you know. All right, go ahead.
But they are. I am interested in having some kind of an emotion in a building, that there's some feeling. I've just been to Berlin and saw Danny Liebeskin's building, which is a Jewish museum, in which he denied public space, and this is his first building built, and he magically, you feel the anger, his anger about the Holocaust in this building. And that to get passion through the process of building, you're doing models, drawings, workmen, codes, budgets, to go through that 2-3 year process and come out the other end with a building that exudes some passion. That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And when you see it, that's what you respond to.
That the building speaks to your emotion.
Yes, it gives you have some feeling with it to you and you to it. And in the 19th century or in the Renaissance, it was decoration that did that. You responded to that. Today, nostalgia everybody goes back to the 19th century, but I think we're living in a world that's faster. The airplanes, cars, there's movement in our space, and it seems logical to evoke it or use it or work with it because it's around you.
You've never been moved by nostalgia.
Well, I can get nostalgic. I mean, we're all, I try to watch it.
You said, mentioning Berlin, and what's a lot of exciting architecture going on there.
We're doing a building in Pariser Platz on the site of Albert Speer's home, I guess. They found his bunker when they dug into it.
You said, what I meant is that Europe is interested in architecture, America is interested in buildings.
Well,
you said that in response to a quote.
Fair.
Somebody had quoted you saying America doesn't understand architecture. And you said, well, what I meant is that Europe is interested in architecture, America is interested in buildings.
That's not quite fair. America builds more buildings, therefore there's probably more good architecture built in America. But I've never been asked to do a public anything for the U.S. government. Yeah. In fact, when I send in my resume, they on a specific project, I hear they have guffaws about it. I've never met the American president. I've met the French president, two French presidents.
Had personal conversations with both of them.
And a lot of governmental people in Italy and Germany. So they're more interested. Tradition is more involved, and Germany is the country that bought into Picasso before France did.
Of course it did.
So they are open for some reason, unlike most of the public clients anyway in America.
You think that'll ever change in America? I mean, this sense of appreciation by our highest officials of architecture and the place of buildings and how frequently our times are defined by buildings?
Well, as they become better educated, if they get interested. I mean, nobody seems to be really interested.
Late Nelson Rockefeller at least had a edifice complex.
And Kennedy had some interest.
Wanted to see something done about, certainly about Pennsylvania Avenue.
Right. I did meet Hillary at the opening of the American Center.
Yeah. The American Center in Paris.
And she seemed to be interested, but I don't know.
There, you can look at the American Center in Paris and look at Bilbao and see that it's done by the same architect.
I suppose.
Bilbao is said to be your greatest masterpiece. Do you think that's an accurate appraisal?
I, right now, see every flaw in the thing. So I go through this horror, and everybody's praising me while I'm just, God, I didn't do that.
Hold this tape here. This is a tape that was done actually on site. You'll see the director of the Guggenheim and also Frank in this and talking, but roll tape, we'll see the entire tape, and we'll come back and you can interject as you see this if you'd like. Roll tape.
We invited a number of architects to make presentations, and what distinguished Frank's was his extreme sensitivity to the site and the history of the place. His choice of materials and his choice of shapes in the way that he worked with the site. I mean, he clearly was not designing a building in the abstract, but he was designing an abstract building in a specific location.
The site was unusual because it was part of a 19th century city, part of a river, set in a green valley with a big bridge cutting right through it. It's pretty dynamic.
One of Frank's great attributes as an architect is his willingness to do so many variations and so many models and so many approaches to a given problem that eventually the best one emerges. And what's emerged is spectacular. This is a unique enterprise between a private, not-for-profit institution and an autonomous regional government. The Basque government had already embarked on a number of projects and were already moving in the right direction, so there was no difference of opinion. They had already hired James Sterling to redesign the railroad station, and Norman Foster was engaged to design the most modern mass transit system in Europe. They had engaged Santiago Calatrava to design a new airline terminal, and much of this was underway before the Guggenheim ever began discussions with the Basque Country. What we were able to do in Bilbao is create a new generation of museums, and I think scale here is the issue. The test of a great building is its ability to handle relevant art of the 20th century, let's say, and that'll range from a Richard Serra sculpture that weighs 70 tons to an 85-foot Jim Rosenquist painting to a Picasso drawing. So in this building, you will see spaces that are equally appropriate for works of such diverse scale. Scale has an impact. I mean, there is something that's heroic about it. So if you can put these things together and make a building that is highly attractive to a visceral experience, and at the same time, if you can make the building subtly serve a wide range of important art of the 20th and hopefully the 21st century, then you've accomplished something really special, and I think that Frank's done that with this building. The public recognition of the Guggenheim Museum is strongly influenced by its architecture, and that's, interestingly enough, helped the collection to continue to grow. And Frank Lloyd Wright anticipated that, set that up as a model, so to speak, is that he wanted to build a museum that was like no other, and he was very successful in doing that.
The riverfront and the idea of the boat context suggested that we use metal. We had samples of titanium. It's a metal that takes the light beautifully. You can make it thinner, so the material is almost foil-like thinness. It ripples in the wind, so as the wind goes through the valley, this material, this surface will ripple, and you can imagine what it's going to do with the light. It's going to change constantly. The building has to have an iconic presence. It has to be important, like the library, like the courthouse, a place that has importance that makes the artists and the community understand the relationship of art to the world.
It's not the kind of thing that you experience only when you get right there. You can see this one coming from a long way away. It's going to be precedent setting for what museums of the 21st century can be. It really is an extraordinary thing.
The titanium.
Yes.
First time you've used it.
Yes.
It had been used in Japan before.
Yes.
great
It's not a
about it?
building material. It's commonly used.
Yeah.
It's an element. It's. I loved it because of the way it takes the light and plays with the light, and there's a warmth to it that stainless steel doesn't have. In our past buildings, we used lead copper, which does that.
Yeah.
But lead copper has been outlawed because the lead comes off into the water table.
Right.
So all over the world, it's not usable anymore. So I was looking for something. I started with stainless and tried to mess with the surface, so I got, and I had some samples of titanium. I'd seen the titanium used, the 747 landing gear is titanium, and it looks buttery.
The 747 landing gear.
Yeah, what you land on in those planes is a big chunk of titanium that's very strong. It had a buttery color to it, not yellow though, but it took the light beautifully. And so I asked for some samples of pieces, and I got them, and we found that we could make it less than a third of a millimeter thick. So it's very thin, and it has a 100-year life guarantee. I don't know who's going to be around to. So the idea of firmness, commodity and delight, firmness has another dimension today. With it used to be that stone was considered the permanent material, and here you have a third of a millimeter of metal that will last longer than stone and won't discolor. And
so it's a great material.
It's a great material.
And why
now,
is it used more?
Well, there was a window, and I don't know, it had something to do with Russia and Australia, where the mines are, that Russia was dumping or selling a lot of it cheaply, and the market came down, and that we had bid the building with stainless and an alternate in titanium, with the preference titanium, and the titanium
price
came under the stainless, and so it was a slam dunk. Now, whether you could do it again, I don't know.
Back to the question of price. You came in, and I think you may have answered this, but you came in on price and time on this?
Yes.
And schedule?
Yes. The original budget in 1991 or whenever we started was $100 million US and whatever the equivalent of pesetas. And today, it came in exactly on the number of pesetas, and that's because the peseta went down. It's now $89 million in US. So it actually came down in US dollars. But that's important to me, that you can't build these things unless you can do that. And that.
What do you mean by that?
You can't build buildings that look like this
unless
you come in on budget, unless you can
come in on time and budget.
Unless you can do that, yeah. I mean, you don't want to. The Sydney Opera House, those kind of horror stories that happen are terrifying to clients.
Do you think you scare people because you are not?
I probably scare people. I don't think of myself as scary.
I know, but you do.
You do. I do.
Why do you think that is?
I don't mean to. Well, I've just been in Modena with Irving Lavin from Princeton, and we were talking about, with the mayor, about something in 1998. They want to have a revocation of the Count d'Este's move from Ferrara to Modena in the government, and they have a public square, and they want to put something in it. And I met with the mayor, and to my mind came an idea of using cranes and stuff. They only have $1 million for this thing, which means you can't do very much. And I just started fantasizing in front of the guy, and I saw Mr. Lavin, Professor Lavin, in shock.
That's great.
Now,
that's just today this happened.
Yesterday.
Yesterday. All right.
So when I meet a new client, I usually warn them. I say, look, I'm probably going to come up with something that is different, just based on past experience. To me, it's going to look very normal because it's in my logic system, and it looks ordinary to me. It doesn't look like. So I'm not aware of what you're going to see. And I said, but don't worry about it, because if you don't like it, we're not going to do it. I love the give and take with the client. I love their getting involved. So I'll show the ideas and throw them out, and then we talk about it. We work on them, and we work together. And 99% of my clients at the end are complicit, emotionally involved, like it, and call me all kinds of wonderful things. So, and I love that. I need that. I love that at the end game, where the woman called me and said, I slept in a bedroom last night that I had the wonderful dreams. Thank you. I love that. That's what I get off on. When the clients are not there at the end, that's happened to 2 or 3 buildings, and they're good buildings. I show them, and I'm proud of them, but I've never gone to see them. I didn't go. It's not the same, because the process of working with people like Tom Krenz, Paul Allen now, and I forget who else, Jay Chiat, is very exciting to me. These are very bright people, and I learn from them, and I engage with them, and fantasize with them, and these creations come out.
Does it become, I'm interested in the process, does it become a kind of give and take, or in a sense, is it mainly you trying to get them to come around to your vision?
Once they come to me now, Now, earlier it was different. I used to have a lot of heavy breathing, and I would put the thing out, and I would mentally duck as they would scream.
That's right.
Over time.
Why did I have you in here?
Yeah, over time, I've built up a small constituency of people that understand and want to play and want to get involved for whatever reason. And it becomes a partnership.
Well, wait a minute, I don't understand. It becomes a partnership in that now.
Well, I'm the expert. They can't design it.
Right.
But I come up with the ideas and the response. And what you see as strange is very little tweak from, I mean, I start out with a very hard, tough program relationship that meets all the requirements. So I'm creative in working the requirements so they do what the person wants, who's paying for this. The tweak is very small. If you look at Disney Hall, those shapes actually fit functionally what's behind them. But I've just twisted them, just slightly. When you aggregate that, it looks like, you know, an armada of ships coming down the street, but it's very small, the tweak.
Now, what's going to happen to the place out in L.A.?
They're talking about building it again.
Yeah, and they're going to go out and raise some money so they can build it?
They are. They have some, the mayor has been spectacular.
Reardon's going to go out and try to put together some kind of...
Well, he during one of his campaigns...
And what's the name of it? It's the L.A. Cultural Center? What is it?
No, it's Walt Disney Concert.
Oh, Walt Disney Concert.
And the Disney family gave the money.
Right. They gave 50 million.
Well, it ended up they gave closer to 100 million.
Oh.
And the first go-around was a mess, mismanaged from everybody's standpoint. I was the only clean one when it came out, but I was the one that took the heat because everybody says it must be the architect. Must be Gehry, and it wasn't in this case. And everybody knows who was in there knew, but it happens. Yeah. It happens because the language is different, and it's like if you were translating a French novel and you gave it to somebody who didn't speak French. That's what happened. It was Gehry language given to somebody who didn't speak Gehry language, and they couldn't translate it. And they did the drawings for the construction, and it didn't work.
What is your drive? What is it that pushes you forward? What is it that makes you keep wanting to win those commissions and build the next building?
I had a tough mother. She's gone now, but every clipping that ever came my way on me over the last 30 years, I only sent a copy to her. When she died.
She's the only one that got a copy.
Yes, and when she died, so I was trying to please her, obviously, for all these years, because she wanted me to be something special. She did. She told me that all my life, and then she used to tell me I wasn't going to get there. So that's the psychological drive. What I'm aware of now is the excitement of doing it, of achieving, and the process of working with the kind of people I'm getting to work with.
Do you think there's any great difference between the perception of Gehry and the reality of Gehry?
I think when people get to know me, get involved, there's a different perception. I'm certainly tough. I'm not a pussycat. I want to get, but I'm pretty straight with people. I tell them where I'm going and how I'm going to do it, and I rarely have a misfit. Rarely now. I mean, it's usually, and so the process is exciting. I dream about buildings. I sometimes design in my dreams. I wake up. That thing I did for Times Square, for Warner Brothers, that was just, they threw me a challenge that was, and I didn't know these guys, Semmel and Daly. They came to my office, and I said, I can't do that. That's a signboard, you know.
Yeah.
They said, really, we want an Eiffel Tower. We want you to take over the street. We want to identify it as Time Warner building. And I thought about it, I worked on it, and at the end, about 3 or 4 weeks passed, and I was building models and charging money, and I finally called their guy, and I said, I don't think I'm going to make it. I don't think this is possible. And I went to sleep that night. As I was going to bed, I thought, how can I get beaten? I can't.
No.
In my dream, I designed it. Woke up in the morning. So it was a half sleep. It's a terrible kind of sleep where you're working. And I woke up in the morning, went in and did the thing, and it solved their problem. Of course, they're not going to build it because they only rented the building for 25 years, and they don't want to spend that kind of money. We don't really know how much it was going to cost, but...
And how great a disappointment is that?
I'm glad I did it. You know, the thing, it pushed me into something else.
To solve the problem.
Yeah, and they were interesting people. They're not...
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
So, and something will happen.
Congratulations on Bilbao. It is a remarkable work of art. Here, just one more time, and I take a look at this from this magazine, you can see defining characteristics of the architecture of Frank Gehry. Great to have you. We're coming out one day to do an hour with you at your studio in Santa Monica.
Okay.
Santa Monica?
Yeah.
Okay, so not far from the house, huh?
Nope. 8 blocks. And my wife and I take 2 cars every morning to work. Very LA.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.